I'm such a mess that there just ain't no way. I went to Balboa Island, laid in the sand. I may be ugly as sin, but at least now I'm tan. Whoa. I wish I looked a little better. Whoa. Where is the Discord? Let's let the mods know that I am now live on the YouTubes. Okay. Actually, maybe I should. Is there a way to share? Where's the chat? There's chat. Oh, hey, there are people already here. Damn, a whole bunch of people out of nowhere. Brendan Pfister, Ambi Navy, longtime friend of the of MCDM. East Coast Archmage, the best kind of Archmage. Hello, what's up, Rosetta Foster? What's up, Ivo Andre? Hello, hi, howdy, hello, hi. I hope everybody's having a really good Sunday. Derringer HK says, hey Matt, hello, hi. I got to play the first Draw Steel game with friends this weekend. I predict that you had fun. Nick Fisher says the Discord ping actually worked this time. Awesome. Smear SMIRL in SM in real life 33. Hello, longtime fan. What's up, Chris Hopper? What's up, Chris Hopper? Without which Sine qua non, without which not. The Canadian Lemurs just finished reading through the Heroes book, and it totally reignited their interest in medieval fantasy. That makes me really happy. Can't wait to play a Shadow medieval fantasy. Can't wait to play a Shadow. Shen, you of all people must know, no man can escape his shadow. It's one of the most badass lines of dialogue ever, and it's a fucking. I think that was a fan thing. The Canadian Lemur. Somebody made this comment on a YouTube video. I don't even think it was mine. I think it might have been one of the other YouTubers covering the game. And I think exactly the same person went to the subreddit like yesterday or whatever and said, I never imagined a game. I never thought I would fall in love with an RPG the way I fell in love with D&D until Draw Steel. And I was like, really? What is somebody? Wait, what happened to the standby? There we go. It gets weird. It gets weird in here with just me talking and no sound. Wowie Owie says, Draw Steel is my name game for real. It is spreading to Iran. We have seen people all over the world. Sit there. I was just in our general manager's office Friday as he and Jerry were sitting there staring at a screen going, what is IQ? What is PE? looking at country codes, and we're like, wow. I am also happy. I'm looking forward to that Magical Quincy. We have a looking for group channel in our Discord. Donald Koenig, what's up? Happy Sunday. We have a tradition here where every time I upload a video to YouTube, we hang out and chat. Normally it's on a Saturday, but I was taking the day off yesterday, and so today I'm back on it. Happy to be talking about Draw Steel, or whatever else is on you folks' mind. William Vadoch, I think it's CH is how that CZ is pronounced. I could be wrong. Going to be running Draw Steel for friends in 2 weeks. Looking forward to it. And I predict you're going to have a good time. Just give yourself some grace. It is a new game that is as complicated as, there's a lot of received wisdom. At least, I mean, maybe we're seeing that era dying off. But certainly when I was coming up in the 90s and well into the 2000s, there was this received wisdom that there was this that if you want success in the tabletop role-playing sphere, it was obvious to a lot of smart people that you need to make a very simple game. And I was always like, why? Who told you that? There's this fear of complexity that is weirdly, it's very, very popular, but it's also very ahistorical. Some of my favorite games, some of the most popular games that have ever existed, like League of Legends, is so complicated. At least it used to be. I don't know. It's been a little while since I played it. It used to be so complicated that I could not figure it out. A friend of mine and I tried to play, and we were game devs, and I was a game designer. I'm like, I have no idea what the hell's going on in this game because there was no onboarding, right? No tutorialization, and it is abstruse. It is weird on purpose. And I remember my friend Austin and I bounced off it, and then my friend David was like, "Wait, you guys were playing WoW? I mean, playing League of Legends, playing LOL?" And I was like, oh, well, we tried it. It didn't work. Didn't work for us. Couldn't make it work. Had no idea what the hell we were doing. He goes, oh. And he said, let's just get in a game. And he played his character very like an RTS, which is where its bones are from. Very like an RTS. He ran his character in top lane while he was watching Austin and I in the bottom lane and taught us how to play. And that it very strongly reminded me of, being a teenager, learning D&D. You open the books and you're like, oh, right? But it's like, that's not, you have an older brother or somebody a year or two ahead of you in school or whatever, or now you've got Vijayos that will teach you how to play. Hi, I'm your video DJ. I always sound like I'm wigged out on Quaaludes. So yeah, people are afraid of people. There's this, I don't mean people as in players. Players don't give a shit. Players, if it's cool, players will soak an unbelievable amount. If they're hooked, if they fall in love, which is really all anybody wants to do. If they fall in love, they will spend inordinate amount of time mastering really complicated systems in the hopes that it will pay off. And there are some games, Star Citizen, where you might master that system, but it's never going to pay off. You're just going to go in circles, right? But normally you play a game, you look at a game like, Dungeons and Dragons or Draw Steel, and you think, if I spend the time, this will become second nature. And it will. That's the lesson. It will. It absolutely will. And in fact, I think it's easier with Draw Steel because things are the way they are for obvious reasons rather than because that's how it was in the 1970s. Read faster, Asina. My players, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that name correctly. Oh, what's up, Warsmith Painting? Always nice to see familiar faces here in the YouTube, which is how apparently it's supposed to be pronounced, according to Lee Mack. Rene Wojak, world's #1 Ajax puncher. Laz Prayoga. I can't. I'm doing my best, folks. Give me some credit. Hello, Uncle Matt. Hello. I may be committing a great sin of running Draw Steel in the Forgotten Realms. No, that's. I mean, lots of people are going to do that. I hope the Timescape gods will forgive me. I mean, they already have. The Timescape gods are remote and disinterested in what goes on here in the medieval fantasy land. But we know, based on our own polling and data, which I think is pretty good, that relatively high quality data. That 70% of dungeon masters, directors, GMs, they make their own world, right? So when you talk about, there's a Draw Steel has a world in it, it's like, yeah, but that's because we felt like we needed that in order for anything to make sense. You gotta have stuff to talk about. But we didn't assume everybody was going to use it, or everybody should use it. Or we knew that even the most popular role-playing setting you've ever heard of only appeals to a fraction of that 30%. So relax. When it comes off MTV, get off the MTV. Very happy, Malcolm Malkavian, that my Gen X references do not go amiss. Speaking of which, Terence Stamp checked out. Man, I wasn't when I woke up this morning and I saw that Terence Stamp had checked out. I didn't feel any real way about it. I was like, oh man, that guy had a great run, great career. Sort of had two careers in the 60s as one of the darlings. He was sort of the actor that everybody wanted Michael Caine to be. He was one of the darlings of the swinging London actor set. Really young, flash, good looking, very, very chill. And then spent his 40 days or 40 years or whatever in the wilderness, and that time included the Superman movie that he did. And then he's had a career resurgence when he was older and got to basically do whatever he wanted. He was in all kinds of movies. He was in one of my all-time favorite comedies, Bowfinger. Brilliant movie, minor part. But C. Robert Cargill, who's a screenwriter, were mutuals on Blue Sky. He tweeted 4 Terence Stamp movies, one of which I should see because it's also got John Hurt in it. I think it's called The Hit, and I've heard of it before. I should watch it. And he tweeted The Limey and The Adventures of Priscilla, Queen of the Desert, that's what I was going to tweet. And I was like, well, C. Robert Cargill tweeted it, so I don't need to do that. I'll just retweet him. And then I thought, oh, wait, hang on a minute. There's another thing that Terence Stamp sort of represented to me, and that was Swinging London, because Waterloo Sunset references Terry and Julie. And that was Terence Stamp and Julie Christie, who were dating, and they were not just dating, they were each individually avatars of the youth culture at the time, and the fact that they were together was sort of like a fairy tale. And Ray Davies would go on to say that when people would ask him, is that Terence Stamp and Julie Christie? He'd be like, oh yeah, I don't know, maybe, yeah, probably, who knows, right? And then later he would be like, no, it's not them, it's about my sister. And I'm like, nah, your sister wasn't named Julie though. And I think I know, speaking as a creative person, I think I can read between the lines. And he wrote a song. Waterloo Sunset is one of the best songs you're ever going to hear, considered by a lot of rock critics as the peak, the peak songwriting, the greatest song of the rock era. And it's hard for me not to listen to that song and get really nostalgic for a time I wasn't there for. But my mom, it's borrowed nostalgia. It's my mom's nostalgia, because she was that age growing up in California, and everything she did was pointing toward, what was that? Discord just went weird. Everything was pointing. The reason I'm a heinous Anglophile, and all the art and music and TV that I engage with is all British, is because of my mom. So of course I would have this weird borrowed nostalgia for it, and that sense of like, I think getting back to what I was saying, I think Ray Davies just got tired of people thinking it was literal, and it wasn't literal. He didn't pick Terence and Julie because he knew them or because he saw them. I don't think so. I think he picked them because of what they represented. They themselves in that song are a metaphor. And a lot of people don't like metaphors. They want everything to be perfectly literal. It's like, well, so anyway, and then I got real melancholy when I thought about that era, that swinging London era dying. And soon there won't be anybody left that remembers it. There'll be just people like me who remember the people who remembered it. And that makes me sad. Anyway. YouTube doesn't like it when I get behind on chat, which, fuck off, YouTube. Stop being a wanker. Where were we? Okay, here we go. Do the YouTube folks get to know about the hypothetical Ajax build-up adventure? I mean, if they want to, yeah, sure. It doesn't exist yet, and there's not even a plan for it. The success of Lancer and similar titles shows a love for complexity in the TTRPG space. Yeah, sure. I mean, that's my point. My point is that the audience always loves really complicated games. It's devs who convince themselves otherwise. I don't know why. If all we gotta do is get a really popular nerd license and make a really simple game, and the world will be the path to our door. And that is, a lot of little tiny game companies have died on that hill. Yeah, and one of the Lancer devs said some very complimentary thing. Also, a lot of like, I'm glad I didn't make this game. I made the game I wanted to make, and it's like, well, I feel the same way about our game. But Lancer looks amazing, and so it was really cool. I mean, Lancer, the vibe of Lancer is unbelievable, and everything I know about Lancer, you know what? Fuck it, I'm just going to order it right now. I keep saying everything I know about Lancer I know from Quinn's Quest, but I've got money. You can't stop me. I just start typing in Quinn's Quest instead of Lancer RPG. Is there a print version of Lancer? I would not know. Man. Now this, is it this or is it something else? Lancer. Man, look at that. The art for Lancer is incredible. Is it just, do I actually, hang on a minute. Do I actually already own this because it's just a PDF? Let's see if I search this. Hey everybody, let's watch Matt search Google. It looks like no. Oh, it'd help if I spelled it right. Yep, I already own this. I bought it a couple years ago. So let's let me, if I haven't already. Yeah, okay. I haven't downloaded it on this machine. Yeah, Lancer is so fucking cool, man. So it reminds me a lot of Prophet, which was a comic that I feel like nobody read, but was totally mind-bending. Although that being said, comparison is a thief of joy. So yeah, it was really fun watching the Lancer dev be like, I love Colville's take on this stuff, the setting and the weirdness, the sci-fi, space fantasy 70s weirdness, and then being clear about like he looks. I don't want to speak for that person. You can go read their tweets, but they were talking about how. I think the gist of it was, I used to think this way. I don't anymore. I think this way now. And I'm like, you know what? I'm 10, 15 years from now, I might feel the same way. I'm afraid of all the meta currency in Draw Steel. Well, that means it might not be for you. You don't have to be afraid of it. You don't have to be afraid of not liking things. Most people don't like most things. That's okay. It's okay not to like it, and it's okay not to like it for weird and idiosyncratic reasons. You don't need to apologize. You don't need to broadcast that. You can. I often don't like things, and I just keep it to myself. I would say most of the things I think I don't keep to myself, but. Yeah, I would say it depends on what you're trying to do. Like to me, it depends on what, it if you're coming from D&D, which most of our audience is, to me, the idea of rolling a D20 and adding 6 and trying to beat an armor class, that right there, as soon as that's the language you're using, you no longer get to argue about immersion. You're like, no, that is the least immersive thing I can think of, So, but my point is, and people obviously have fun with that game, right? I think it seems as though people are having a lot of fun with our game. So no, there's the currencies in Draw Steel, each one of them exists for a reason, and they each exist in their own space. And what they do is they create these really cool tactical moments where players, we were playing, so this is a lesson I've been running. The last time I think we were hanging out, I was making an adventure here on YouTube that I was going to run for Draw Steel, and I got like 4 or 5 episodes into it, and I stopped because it was time to play now, and I figured the rest of this will take care of itself, and I think it largely has. And so I've been running now for several weeks, and it's going really well, and it's a lot of the folks from the Chain of Acheron, although 1 or 2 substitutions here or there. And it was really interesting to me because we had a battle last Wednesday. It was sort of the mini boss of the adventure, and I took a level 6 leader and I mathed them to become a level 1 solo. And this is it's a relatively straightforward process. Didn't take long, but it was me kludging something. And so over the course of the battle, it started that there was a point where they finally winded this creature, which meant it was at half health. Half stamina. And I said, okay, this thing is winded now. And Matt O'Driscoll was in the middle of trying to figure something out. And he looked up and he's like, it's only now winded? And he's like, we must have done 100 damage to this thing. And in fact, that was exactly how much they had done, or how much it took to make it half. Now it was like 109 damage or something, but it was winded at a 200 total stamina. And he's like, we're all going to die, man. And I had been thinking that for a couple of actions at this point. I had been thinking this for a couple of turns. I'd been thinking about I think these guys are all going to die. They're not doing enough damage fast enough. And this thing can create minions, and it does its own damage, and has AoE nonsense and stuff. And it's got villain actions, and it gets to take 2 turns per round. And I thought about, tweaking it to make it a little less over the top, because I did not intend this to be a total party kill adventure. This wasn't that kind of encounter. It was supposed to be hard, but not impossible. And I thought maybe I accidentally made it impossible. Impossible encounters are totally fine, as long as that was the player's idea, right? It's like all the signposts were there. You ignored them, and you decided that you were going to do this crazy thing. And well, this is what happens. But this was not that. This was just them doing what the heroes should be doing. And I thought, okay, well, I've got a couple tools here in my toolbox that I can start tweaking, but my gut told me no. And this was me as a player. It wasn't really me as a designer. This is me just thinking, nope, this is what I do. Like anytime I learn a new game, I do my level best to play it. I remember playing the Dune collectible card game for the first time and just wondering the first time I played, what happens if I corner the market on spice and buy all the spice in there? And it turned out that was a really dumb thing to do on the first round of the game, because what it did was it meant that the other characters that had spice, now their spice was unbelievably valuable, and then they sold theirs for all the money, and now mine was worthless. I'm like, okay, well, that didn't bother me. It was my first game. It was the first time I'd ever played this game, and I did that on purpose just to see what happened, right? And so this was kind of that, me as a player just saying, what happens if I just do it by the book? And it turned out not freaking out was the right thing to do, because it meant that Phil, one of the things I did not realize, I was aware of it, but I hadn't integrated it into what was happening in my brains, was Phil, playing the Fury, had not spent any ferocity at all. And I posted a picture of it on Bluesky. He had like 13 ferocity or something like that. Yeah, I think it was like 5 and 8. And he was doing this on purpose. He was saving up his ferocity on purpose because he wanted to get winded, gain some more ferocity, and then become dying, gain some more ferocity, but at dying to the uttermost end, I believe is the name of the ability. When the Fury is dying, to the uttermost end does a D10 damage per ferocity spent, not a D6. And so he and Matt O'Driscoll had to work out like, okay, if I'm surrounded by minions, if I break out of them and just run to this thing, but I run past Lindsay's character, don't go the direct path, go a little bit more circuitous route, then all these monsters will attack me. I will then become dying. And then I'm doing a D10 per, and he did, it was like almost 90 damage. He killed that monster in one blow. In one blow, he just burned all his ferocity. And it was unbelievable. It was everybody at the table was cheering. Phil was had this really visceral, powerful reaction. And I think in that moment, Phil felt the way his character did. So You want to talk about immersion? That's fine. That means different things to different people. But I feel in that moment, Phil it felt incredibly, yeah. Draw Steel, everybody. What's going on? How are you folks doing? Lonomocrat said it was a steep learning curve, but they had a great time. Yeah, I would say if you try to do everything, you don't have to do everything. The Delian Tomb, by the way, the Delian Tomb makes it not a steep learning curve. If you're afraid of the learning curve, that's not unreasonable, but just go get the Delian Tomb. It's $10. It's $10 and you get a stupid amount of content. It's a big adventure. It's not just the 5-room dungeon. That's in there. But then there's more after that. And it walks you through step by step the process of running, so that we do a better job tutorializing than League of Legends does. Excuse me. All right. In some ways, it's simpler. It's simpler than what people are used to. Well, it depends on my point of view, David McDonald. But yeah, if you're used to 130 pages of spells, then Draw Steel's a lot simpler. I think I'm really behind on chat. I'm gonna get caught up here. Ryan LaRoche said, I had the exact same thing happen in their game against the Orc Lord. Yep. To the Uttermost End is really fucking cool. Transitory. Hey, what's up? Yeah. I mean, every once in a while, I like to hang out on YouTube and make sure that people, the YouTube audience gets some attention. What's up, D20 Play? I hope you guys had a good time. I hope that Teos and Sean had a good time. It's a mystery, GubDM. Meandering Mike is very pleased that we used 2D10. Yeah, we tried a lot of stuff. But 2D10 was the right. At the end of the day, 2D10 solved all our problems and was easy and simple. And so once we hit on 2D10, that was it. There were never any issues with the core die mechanic. What's the reasoning behind using the word potencies, Bernard Miller? It's about how potent your shit is. The more potent it is, the harder it is to resist. It's what the word means in the real world, I think. If you have a really high potency, then bad guys are all going to be affected by your stuff. He would have Ginger Coleslaw. I mean, it was Matt O'Driscoll was overwhelmed trying to play the Barbarian in 4th edition, and so I did a little tutorial, but it is really complicated. And so I did a little tutorial danger room for him until it locked in, and he was like, "Oh my god, this is awesome!" And once he understood that, like, basically every time you do anything with the Barbarian, you're gonna get a free something, free attack, free strike, whatever. It all started to click for him, and that was the beginnings of Draw Steel, basically. Do I have any tips for making negotiation feel less mechanical? I am one of the least experienced game masters or directors when it comes to Draw Steel. There are people in this chat who have run it. There are people, we've already seen people who have 40 sessions under their belt because they started running with the very first packet and never stopped and just upgraded their game. Whereas most of my running of Draw Steel has been in play tests and stuff like that. So I'm not the person to ask. That's kind of the point I was trying to make in the video. I was like, the people who make the thing are almost never the best people to pitch you on it. That was my first job. My first job in tabletop was working on the Dune collectible card game, and I was a competitive player, and the designer of it was like, oh, thank God, there's somebody I can hand all this design stuff off to. Matt knows the game better than I do. Right. I would say whether or not you expose the mechanics is up to you, but I would recommend exposing them because there are characters who have special abilities that help them in negotiation. So they need to know they're in a negotiation. But I don't see why exposing that should be any weirder than exposing the fact that, you have to roll 2d10 to make an attack in combat. Right. If you want that experience of like everything's under the hood, and there are no real like it's focusing more on the narrative and not the tactics. I think that's probably Daggerheart. I mean, that's kind of their whole thing, and I think they do a really good job of it. By the way, how do traps work in Draw Steel? It's a great question, Sydney Sorrentino. There's a thing. It's sort of a type of monster. a type of immobile. Well, I mean, most of them are mobile, but they're a thing that you buy with encounter points and that you add to an encounter called a dynamic terrain object. And a dynamic terrain object can be a lot. It covers a lot, just like monster covers a lot. A dynamic terrain like there, and there's a bunch of examples in the monsters book where a dynamic terrain object could be something as weird and complicated as the black obelisk, which is just this thing, this black rock, this finger of black rock that is sitting there in the middle of the combat, and the cultists are trying to do their thing to it, and if X, Y, and Z happens, then it's going to do something crazy, and it just radiates all this malevolent energy, or it could be as simple as like a trebuchet or a scythe trap or something like that. It's some part of the environment that is interactable, and I would recommend going and checking that part of the thing, because dynamic terrain objects are really cool. I think there's going to be a lot of directors who they completely get the hang of running the game, but it's going to take them a couple weeks. And once they basically get to parity with the game they were running, that's when they're going to be ready for stuff like negotiation, montages, and things like dynamic terrain. Look at these are amazing. And yeah, there's a lot of them. Draw Steel is very 4E inspired. Well, I would say it is principally inspired by D&D. It's a class and level-based fantasy game. Where did that come from? But yeah, I mean, we all played 4th edition. We really liked it. Any plans for a quick start of Draw Steel? I don't know what you mean by quick start. It's a complicated game. I mean, I think that's the Delian Tomb. Wouldn't you say that was the Delian Tomb? Sound Tripper, I felt the same way. Well, we're like 6 months away from 10 years of running the game. Pez5767 says, I love tactical play. However, my players really struggle with it. Any suggestions for onboarding that? Nope. I mean, if they don't, I'm not a fan of my players don't like this, and that is a problem to solve. No, I don't. If they don't like it, they don't like it. I don't have, there's a lot of our culture has this very patrician attitude toward it, where everybody feels like it's their job to, I don't think I think it's fine if people don't like it. There are lots, let me tell you, you're not alone. You're not alone. There are generations of dungeon masters, game masters, directors, hollyhock gods, whatever you want to call them. There are generations of them wishing that their players wanted to play the game that they wanted to run. It is not new. It is not unique to Draw Steel. It is not a problem that any game or any piece of advice is going to solve. The kind of music they want to play is not the kind of music you want to play. So what are you going to do? Either you need to get a different band, or you need to compromise. Skylar's so sleepy. Any plans for the 10-year anniversary of running the game? No, not off the top of my head. I've got a bunch of videos in the pike, but none of them are, I think, I don't know. I used to do, this is not the answer to your question, but it's what your question made me think of. I used to do a video every like 100,000 or 50,000 subscribers where I would just talk about what other YouTubers I was following now. And I really miss doing that, and I want to do more of that. Have I seen any surprises with kits and class combos? No, I don't think I have. I mean, the whole point is it's a mix and match system, so I'm not surprised when people mix it and match it. But I no, I don't think I have. I'm always what happens is I see people in the chat in the Discord specifically being like, I really want to make a character like this, and somebody else goes, just take this one kit, and the person goes, oh, I never thought of that. They were trying to solve the problem using their choice of class and subclass, and they didn't realize that your choice of kit actually has a huge impact on how you imagine and theme and flavor your class. Dakaz says, I like that you called out other RPGs that do something better than yours, and honestly recommend them. Yeah, I mean, I think so. I don't know if it's obvious. I mean, there were there are people out there, if you know where to look, who thought that me, I wrote that, doing that was it's hard for me to describe what their problem was because it was so weird. But there are people out there who read that section and got either angry or upset, choose your word. But there's a lot of these folks, and this is kind of why I did the getting caught up with Draw Steel video the way I did, where I talked about where we came from. Because I think there were a lot of people seeing that Draw Steel was getting a lot of heat, and they had no idea what the provenance of it was. So when they open it up and they see that we're talking about other games, including talking about like D&D, like if you're coming from D20 Fantasy, here's some stuff you need to know. And they got real frisky about that. so I made sure that the video said, hey, here's who we are. We're these folks that have been playing D&D since the 80s, and we just spent the last 7 years making DLC for D&D. What kind of game did you think we were going to make, right? And the reason I wrote that section at the front of the book, which I resisted, it was one of the first things we wrote for the book. It was one of the first things we wrote. And so for years, 2 years, every time I opened a manuscript up, I would look at that and go, I'm getting kind of bored of this. Maybe there's a better, like, no, it's fine. Don't rewrite it. Don't replace it. It's the fact that you're bored with it is not a problem. But the reason I did it was because I knew, or I believed, that we were going to have many thousands of people who this was their second game. This was the first time they ever played a game that wasn't D&D. And I thought it's super fucking important that they know that there's other games out there, that branching off from the industry, from the market leader, it's a big step, and you're stepping into a huge ocean, and we're just one game. And you're trying to get away from D&D just because you're coming to Draw. Some people are going to come to Draw Steel principally because they're trying to get away from D&D. And they're hoping Draw Steel is the island that they're going to wash up on and be like, oh, thank God. But some of those people are going to discover, oh, actually, what I want is not this. That doesn't necessarily mean I want this. Yeah, maybe you want this, maybe you want that, maybe you want this other thing, right? So knowing how many people were going to be coming here from I've only ever played D&D, I felt like it was our responsibility to say there are other fish in the sea, folks. If this doesn't do it for you, go look over here, go look over there. If you feel like it's not immersive enough, that's not a problem. It's not a problem for you. It's not a problem for us. It just means you got to move on to another game, and you'll find the one you like. Hello, Durmeister. Why did MCDM settle with immunity X to damage? I don't remember. That was mostly James, and so James, I'm the design director. James is the lead designer. There was a point where the core rules were largely established, and so I was kind of going on to work on this stuff, and James was working on more nitty-gritty, low-level, like language and balance stuff, and that was part of that. And I remember seeing that and going, oh yep, I get this. This is cool. I'm immune to 5 damage. Well, I guess one of the reasons is that our game does not have a thing, as far as I know, our game does not have a thing that says you can ignore all of a certain kind of damage. So in another game, if you could do that, that would be called immunity. I am immune to fire, right? Our game doesn't have that. And it doesn't have that for a lot of reasons. We did our level best to try to avoid making a game where it was trivially easy for the players to make characters that either broke the Dungeon Master's world or their adventure design. And you're like, because we've seen it often, and it's really frustrating. So we threw that out. So once you don't have that, what do you call the ability to ignore a certain amount? I'm immune to a certain amount of this. I'm immune to 5 of this. Perfect. And in fact, the only reason we would have used resistance is because the Seattle company used it, and that is a bad reason to do it. And it's probably the number one comment we get is, why did you change it from a D20? I'm like, we didn't. It was never a D20 game. It was never resistance. It was always immunity. We didn't change anything, right? So if what you want is the game that uses all the terms and language and rules that you already know, that game already exists. You can buy it in game stores. It's called The Gilded Hole, I think is what it's called. Excuse me. I don't know if it's Thibault or Thibault. I think it's Thibault Schwartz. What are the different responsibilities between a lead designer and design director? It's a good question. What's the difference between a design director and a lead designer? That lead designer is James. The true answer is you got to sit here. In order to get the right answer, you're gonna have to sit here for a minute or two and listen to me bloviate, and then you got to go to one of James's streams. James streams on Wednesday mornings. I believe it's literally twitch.tv/JamesIntrocasso, one word, I believe. And you got to ask him, and you got to listen to what I say, and you got to listen to what James says, and you got to think about how the truth is somewhere in the middle, probably. But the best example of the difference between the design director, I think, what's up, Demetrius Christou? Nice to see you live. The best way to answer that, I think, is to talk about the talent. The talent is a class that we did for 5th edition. It was, I guess, the last, we'll see. It was the last third-party 5e class that we designed. It was really fucking cool. And it came about for various reasons. We don't need to get into it, but I had an idea for how to make a new kind of spellcasting class in D&D. And so my original idea was I would pitch it to James, and if James was excited, we would find somebody to design it. We would pay them because we were busy. And I said, James, I want to talk about this idea I had for a new class for 5e. He's like, yeah, let's hear it. And I pitched him on how should the talent work. First of all, I pitched him on the name. He loved it. He's like, that's awesome. Super weird, different, unique. People are going to hate it. I love it. The talent and the idea that spells, right? I figured we would probably call them powers or something like that. We would want to call them something different than a spell, but they're spells. Spells, but you don't have any spell slots. You don't have any spell slots. There's no sense of like, I cast a spell and I forget it. There's none of that Vancian nonsense. Any spell you can try to cast, right? It's just you make a roll. And I thought it might be a Constitution roll, but it could have been an int roll. I don't even remember where we landed on that, but I was aware it could be. But let's say it's a con check. You make a con check in 5e to see, is my mind strong? Is my body strong enough to cast this spell? And I originally, I didn't. I was like, and if you fail, you accumulate strain. So as long as you succeed, so different spells have different difficulty levels, right? Which 5e already has DC, difficulty class. What's the DC to manifest this power? Oh, it's 17. Oh, Jesus. I'm only first level talent. That means I need to roll well, right? But as long as I roll well, I just keep casting and nothing bad happens. As long as I roll well, I could at first level, I could be casting really powerful shit as long as I always roll well. Well, of course, you're not going to always roll well. So what happens when you fail? You accumulate strain. And I had a vision for how that should work. I was like, there should be 3 tracks for where you put your strain: mind, body, and soul. Right, and the first one, it's in order, right? Like you can't take a point of strain and put it in the second box. Nope, it always has to go in the first box first, second box second, third box third, but you can choose which of these 3 to put them in at any given moment. So it's soak. It's this soak. You can at first, and I was like, and they don't all have to have, each box can have its own effect. Like, oh, now that I've got 2 points now that I put 2 strain in body, I have disadvantage on con checks, for instance, right? But some of them can just be cosmetic. Like let's take it easy on the player and make the first box cosmetic. But some of the other boxes can be cosmetic. Like my nose starts to bleed, right? Which is a classic. And eventually, if I fill up the strain and I keep casting, my character is going to die. You could kill yourself doing this, right? But that was a choice you made. This is the pitch. I was like, that was a choice you made. You knew if I fail this die roll and I accumulate 1 more strain, that's it. But I would save the world. Like the world hangs in the balance. Is it worth it? Is it worth it? Is it worth it? And then you make that call. And so you knew what was going to happen before you did it. Now, in point of fact, the release build of that class, I think the worst that can happen at first level is you can go unconscious because you haven't unlocked the whole strain track yet. You unlock the strain track over the course of but that was the pitch. So go, and James was like, that is fucking amazing. I don't want to assign this to anybody. I want to make it. And I'm like, oh, damn, okay. And that weekend, I think that was a 3-day weekend, as I recall. That weekend, by the time Monday had come along, James had already designed like 50 psionic abilities, and they're all in that product. And many of them are in draw steel because he just had the bit between the teeth. And he felt like it was his. He felt like, I get it. That's a killer pitch. I will go figure out how to make it work. That's the difference between the design director and the lead designer. That's a killer pitch. I will figure out how to make it work. And there was a lot of back and forth. And there were times when the testers were saying, this isn't working. And James would come to me and he would be like, I don't think strain's working. I don't think we will do this, that, and the other thing. I'm like, well, what if we just did this? What if we just did that? And because I wasn't in the trenches, right? I was a lot freer to have unorthodox thoughts about solutions. And James would like, that's it. And so that's the relationship in Draw Steel. I was like, Draw Steel should work like this. And the biggest difference between how I thought it was going to work and how it turned out to work was I thought, and this was part of the pitch, that just using your signature abilities earned you your heroic resource. Just do the thing your class is good at and you earn more of this juice that you get to spend on other stuff. Well, it turned out that very quickly proved to be a bad idea because players did not like the idea that they had to choose between that if they wanted to do something besides use their signature action, like they wanted to rescue somebody or something, and that required you using their main action, that meant they didn't get any of their juice. And it was like, yeah, that's a good point. What if we made this just constant? It's just there's a constant amount you always get. But stuff like, I wanted there to be boutique ways for you to get your resource. So the tactician gets more focus whenever somebody does this, and it's one here and one here. I wanted lots of little tiny ways to get more, and I also wanted lots of little tiny ways to spend it. And then James goes, yeah, I think that's a good idea. I will go figure that out. Ta-da! I would say that is a really insightful way of putting it. Toasty Virus. You know what it is? It's tactics and strategy. I'm in charge of the strategy. James is in charge of the tactics. I'm the person saying, we need to take that hill. And James is like, I agree. I will figure out how to do that. Malcolm Cook played Draw Steel with their main group and think it was the most fun they've ever had on the first session with a new system in their life. Folks, what do you like? Don't listen to me. Don't ask me these questions. Ask these guys. They're already having fun. And they've been having fun for a while. Oh, Sienna says, hi Matt, just wanted to say I love the writing of the Saints, especially Kyrialka, the false principal, aka Saint Bernie Madoff. Yep, he invents the Ponzi scheme. Yep, I had a lot of fun with the Devil Saints. They were a blast. I had fun with the Saints in general, and it's too bad that they came online as late as they did, because it would have been a lot more fun, I think, if they each had little holy symbols. Grace and I were just talking Friday or Thursday, I guess, about what holy symbols some of these guys could have or should have. And I started to think about what makes a good holy symbol and how is that similar to or different from heraldry. And then I realized, no, it should be different from heraldry. And what I thought, like, there's some classic fantasy RPGs where all these gods have all these crazy symbols. And I look at them and I look at those symbols and I go, I don't get any, they look like, to me, like what I think they actually are, which is some dude just made all this shit up and never thought about the culture from which they came. And what kind of visual language would any given culture, especially this one, develop to express the idea of a saint's holy symbol? It would have a lot of variation, but I think you would be able to tell that those were holy symbols because they were being pulled from some similar cultural cachet. And that's, anyway, that would have been, wouldn't it be cool if I had figured that out before the book was done early enough for us to get holy symbols for them? Yes. Did I do that? No. But that's, the future is always. Tokavian says, I'd love to see more art around the saints and gods. Moi aussi. I am with you. You and I are of one. We are two great minds with but a single thought. How do you pronounce Sithron Aronazir? I have no idea. I've never said those words out loud before. Yo dog, what's up, Jenny Honeywell? It's rare is the yo dog, but therefore all the more precious as a result. How easy would it be for folks to make third-party content for Draw Steel? Nothing could be easier. On a scale of WotC to Arcane Library, we are firmly in the Arcane Library camp. We opened our game. The whole thing is open. Everything except the art and the graphic design. All of the text. All of the text. You can do whatever you want with it. You can do whatever you want with it. As long as you don't. The only things you cannot do are you can't. Well, I guess use the art. And that includes like our logos. And you can't. There are specific rules about this. But if you read them all, the summary is you can't try to make a product that tricks people into thinking it's an official product. And you got to read that license and understand what that means, because you might not realize that you did that. And we've seen people do that. And we've seen people do that with various like tools, like online tools. And we just reach out to them and we say, "What are you doing?" And they go, "Oh, blah blah blah." And we say, "Well, how about if we gave you this or let you use this, and then it'll be official. You don't have to worry about it." And they're like, "Oh," like that. Oh, there we go. We just want everybody to. What we're trying to do is, it's not really like a trademark. What we're trying to do is we're trying to protect our audience from being scammed, right? Somebody making a low quality product and wrapping it in MCDM's trade dress so that it looks official. That is the one thing you cannot do. So you can say powered by Draw Steel, but you cannot say Draw Steel. You cannot say it is Draw Steel. You can say powered by Draw Steel. Only we get to say this is Draw Steel. Very happy to see the mod team here. Zen Kaibu says, "Hello, Matt." Hello. I hope you're doing well. I recently discovered that I don't like medieval fantasy that much. Yeah, I get that. None of us are playing Harn, so none of us love it that much. Could Draw Steel still work to emulate other things like anime fights or sci-fi? Those were huge inspirations in the making of the game. Like, Willie brought not just Willie, also Jordy, but Willie brought a huge supply of anime references and zeitgeist and style to the book, and you see it everywhere. But but the reason he did that was because he saw this game supports all that already. This is that kind of game. This is a kind of like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. Who are the 5? Not Voltron. The Voltron cosplayers. Power Rangers. The Power Rangers, it's got all that stuff already in here, right? And yeah, I mean, and in a lot of, it's only, the Draw Steel is only medieval fantasy if you're running it in, I would say if you're running it in Vasloria. If you're running it in Capital, it's absolutely not medieval. It's not medieval. They've got gunpowder, right? If you're running it in the Timescape, it's sci-fi, it's science fantasy. It's 70s retrofuturism. It's Star Wars. The least science fictional thing ever. 13th Warrior is more science fiction than Star Wars is. Is there an official Powered by Draw Steel logo? I believe there is. And people in chat know there is, which is awesome. So we can make any third-party content powered by Draw Steel. You could make a movie. You could make anything you want. You can make a phone. You can make anything you want. You can make anything you want. Call Powered by Draw Steel. Could there be officially sanctioned third party? That's a really interesting question. Let's talk about that. So we're in a weird place right now because there's an enormous number of people creating content for Draw Steel. Astonishing number. There's various like websites that say here's everything we know about. There's a thread, I think it's pinned on the subreddit, talking about here's all these community creations, and it's going to get to the point where it's impossible to track them all. And it's interesting to me because I'm like, this is super cool. Obviously, I'm delighted over the moon. That's the reason we opened the game, was because we felt like this is true of any manufacturer, with maybe one exception, the absent parent, so to speak. But all of us making RPGs, none of us have the capacity to make content that fills every need the players have as quickly as they have it. Nope. We have schedules and budgets and stuff like that. We have a limited supply. So we wanted to make sure that you folks could make the stuff that you felt was missing. Like, where is this thing? I want it. Go make it. And if you're right, if you feel like I can't believe this is missing, everybody wants this, well, then go make it and you'll make a lot of money. Well, depends on what you think of as a lot of money. The audience for Draw Steel is very small right now, but it's growing rapidly. This is the first time in MCDM history where we are making more money every week. And we did not, and we're not running a crowdfunder. This has never happened before. The game is a huge hit. So it's really astonishing that there are so many people making content for it. The thing I think is missing, and I think I understand why, but at first I didn't. I was like, what's going on here? Tons of people are making stuff and there are no tastemakers. There are no curators. Nobody is saying, I've read all this stuff and here's the best of it. And then I realized very quickly, I'm like, oh, because those people are the ones making all this shit. They're too busy. They are too busy. So what we need the game to soak for a while. It won't happen overnight. It might not happen this year because people are still ingesting all this content and they're starting to play and they're looking at all this creator-made stuff. But what's going to happen, inevitably, is you're going to start seeing tastemakers. You're going to start seeing DJs, people who, I don't make music, I just curate it and play it for you. Right? I don't make any of this content. I'm just a Draw Steel fan, and I read all this stuff, and I curate the stuff that I think is best. And once we see that is happening, and I mean multiple people doing it, several people doing it, not multiple people. Multiple people would require Jamie Madrox. Several people. I got Jeff Lindsay in my head. Several people need to be doing this before we would start thinking this way. But once several people are doing it, then I think that's the opportunity for us to step in and say, hey, it seems like everybody loves this thing you did. You want to sell it on our website and we'll take a cut. It'll be a tiny cut. But then you get all of we'll promote it for you. I can even imagine us, if somebody does something on their own dime and we really thought it was awesome and believed in it, I could see us spending some money on it to make it better and then sell it on our store. Now, at that point, our cut gets a little bigger, but it doesn't necessarily have to. It could be a advance against royalties kind of thing. This is all unbelievably speculative. This future may exist, but we cannot will it. We can't will it into being. The community has to get there first. And even if the community got there first, we might not be able to do that. There might be good reasons not to. But right now, it's a thing we talk about and we all agree it would be cool to do. Excuse me. Are there any plans to make an inventor style class? Guinevere Bonds asks. The artificer or something like, I think actually no, our version of the inventor class I think is going to be called the alchemist, and I think it's a tinkerer class, so it's not strictly speaking just it could be we come up with a different name, but we actually like the idea of there being a draw steel version of some of these things. So it's like the draw steel version of an alchemist does the things you would expect an alchemist to, and other stuff like gadgets. Could be wrong. It may be that those are different subclasses of the, or maybe, but yeah, we've already talked about somebody who uses also when we thought the operator was going to be a 5th edition class, we imagined that when you're not in your frame, that you are basically MacGyver, right? But I actually, now that we know how draw steel works, I don't think we need that so much. It would still be true, but it wouldn't be so much of a core part of the game. So we have a lot of ideas in that department. None of them are based on anything that you're already aware of. None of these classes are, oh, let's just take this existing class and just reskin it. No. What we do is when we see people, when we see their stuff that we like or other people like, what we do is we try to find what is that archetype that underlies all this, that gets everybody excited. And that's the thing that inspires us. You've got me for about probably another, at most, hour. FYI. By the way, I think the stream is going amazingly. What sort of soundtrack do you imagine playing in your draw steel games? Toasty Virus is interesting because I do make soundtracks for various games that I run, but in the Codex, which is the official draw steel virtual tabletop, which is not commercially or publicly available right now, but if you sign up for their Discord and volunteer to be a tester, you could get into the testing pool, and then you have access to the VTT. You can upload like an MP3 or a WAV file or whatever and use it as your character's fanfare when your turn starts. And so when Zur, the death captain to the Thane in Exile, my nephew, Jordy's character, starts their turn, all of a sudden you get the Anvil of Crom. Bum 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 bum, and it's awesome, and I love it every time. So is that the soundtrack? Maybe it's soundtrack to my character taking their turn. How about that? How is the Codex coming along? Tons of features. Can I share more about the upcoming Necromancer class? Yeah, I can. In fact, for just $8, I could share the whole thing, and you could just have it and play it. It's on the playtest version is on our Patreon. We have big plans for the Patreon. I think the Patreon might turn into the Vasloria content engine, where you just give us $8 a month and there's just this constant stream of more content for Vasloria of all shapes and sizes. But that, a lot of work has to be done to get from where we are to there. So for right now, it's just the Patreon is where you go if you want to see everything we're doing in advance. The playtest version and then eventually the finished version. How many of the Dragon Phalanx do I think came back as Revenants? That is a good question. I bet there's a lot of them. There's probably an organization of them, frankly. Actually, that might explain something. There's a forest in the Duchy of Argoth, which is in Corwell, which is where I'm running for my Wednesday night group. That is it's being run. It's been taken over and run by a bunch of dragon knights who have sort of gone feral, right? They've renounced their oaths, and it's very much Colonel Kurtz in the upriver, right? And so maybe those guys are revenants. So there's a online father figure. There is I should have got my hair cut today. I didn't. I'm here with you folks instead. I hope you appreciate it. That you get what should have gone to my hair person. That's a person that cuts my hair, not a person made of hair. That's an important distinction. Well, we've got a whole huge whiteboard, Ambi Navy. So there's a class currently in development. It'll be out this year called the Summoner, and it is amazing. And you have a choice of subclasses, and your subclass is what kind of things do you summon. And this has a big impact on the theme and flavor of your class. You can be a necromancer that summons undead. You can be a diabolist. There might be another name for it that summons demons, and these are Nick Despain demons. So they're all these adorable little balls of eyeballs and teeth and tentacles and organs. You can summon pixies and fairies, or you could summon little elemental sprites, little, the draw steel version of Mephits. And the directive, we had a big brainstorming meeting. This is, at this point, almost a year ago, I guess. We had a big brainstorming meeting in which we all talked about what the summoner could do and what it should do. And at the end of that meeting, I said, all right, here's, again, more, what does a design director do? At the end of that meeting, and the whole design team was in there and our producer was in there. I said, all right, Willie, here's the challenge I'm putting in front of you. Start with a necromancer subclass, because he's going to be the person that prototypes this. He knocked it out of the park. I said, start with a necromancer subclass, and I want the following. I want to be able to control up to 12 minions at the same time. Not necessarily all on the first round. Maybe it's, some now and a little more and then a little more, but ultimately I want to be able to control up to 12 minions, because I feel like any less than that, you're still in the whoa territory, but you're not in the holy shit. You're not in that I feel like I'm getting away with something territory, right? So, and I said, I don't want to have to do anything. They just show up. I don't have to spend any money. I spend my resource to either summon more of them or cast spells or empower them. The summoner is a type of spellcaster. And I was like, they just show up. And now what Willie ended up doing, for very good reasons, was they don't show up. You get 4 minions or 4 points of minions or whatever you want to call it every round, but they don't show up on your turn. They show up at the beginning of the round. And that was a deliberate choice that Willie made as a result of playtesting, where he realized you need your minions on the field at the start of battle. In order for the necromancer, in order for the summoner to work the way it's designed, you can't wait for the start of your turn to get your minions. They just need to show up. So we have a thing in the game, colloquially, it doesn't appear anywhere in the book, colloquially called loin girding time. Because in earlier builds of Draw Steel, a whole bunch of stuff happened at the beginning of every round. Right? And as the game developed, more and more of that stuff got pulled out and got put into your turn. And so right now there's very little, not nothing, but very little that happens at the beginning of every combat round. Like Malice generation is one of them. There are a couple other things. Triggers reset, for instance, I think. But it used to be a lot. And so what happened is we started the round, okay, everybody, somebody said, gird your loins, which meant prepare for the next round of combat. And that evolved into loin girding time. And so that's when your minions show up. Your minions show up during loin girding time. And it's unbelievable. It is so fucking cool. You can go watch the folks at Rise Heroes Rise have a bunch of Necromancer videos you can watch where they're actually playing it, and they use Minion Bridge brilliantly. Basically, and in fact, the way I love this. These are Draw Steel players, where this Diabolist, a demon summoner, had summoned it was a lot of minions, and they went like a big corrugated L over the course of the map. And using Minion Bridge allows the summoner to move without spending any of their movement anywhere they want, as long as there are minions there. Literally, the minions are picking you up and carrying you like you're crowd surfing on your minions, which is brilliant. But the way this player interpreted that is, I command the nearest minion, and this demon, this little squig, this little tiny demon goes bah, and opens its mouth, and this person dives in, and then this other minion on the other side of the map goes bah, and I was like, that person gets a gold star. I was like, why isn't everybody playing this game? Anyway, yes, I can share more about the upcoming Necromancer class. That was it. Intelligent Dice says the Diabolist summons biblically accurate. Well, I don't know about biblically accurate angels. They summon maybe. Let's see. Let me show you some. You guys want to see some art? I think we have the best art in the business, and I really mean that. And it brings me joy every time I see it. Oh, that is, you can't see that, and you can't see that. What is that? Oh, wow, that's fucking cool. I don't even know what that is. I don't know enough about that is to show it to you. You can see this. So let's go. I'm in studio mode. How about internet avec la camera? I am a camera. And yeah, actually let us pop you out into a winder. Actually, let's pop you out into your own winder. What else we got? What else we got that I could show off that y'all ain't seen? Love it. Some of you have seen this because I think I've shown. This is what I was looking for. A Blightling. Fuck off. Look at this thing. Look at this thing. It's so hideous. I love it. Summoner of Demons. Devils summoning demons is just... is there anything else that is super cool that you folks should get to see? Oh, I don't know if I can show this off. Yeah, I'm gonna. You guys can't stop me. But now if I do this, it's huge. So, yeah. And now I gotta move this over here so you guys can see it. And then do, how about this? How do I do that? That could be a little better. There we go. Okay, so here we go. Online father figure. You ain't gotta be excited, bro. You can go play it. You can go play. You can go do it. You can do it. It exists in the world. Grosnor can't see anything. Well, are your eyes open? So this is art for one of the summoner subclasses. This is the demon summoner. They are summoning a they are a devil summoner summoning demons, which I love. And there is no relationship. There's no relationship in Orden between demons and devils. It's just that demons are way farther down in the timescape, and the only relationship between demons and devils is that devils get really annoyed by demons because the abyss, the abyssal waste, is below the seven cities, and so when demons full of souls start to get identity and ambition and want to get out of hell so that they don't lose their souls and thereby their identity, in order to get out of hell, you have to go through the seven cities, and so there's a whole bunch of they just get annoyed. Like, come on, man, what are these things? They're like, it's like, you know, you got to get the X-Verminator. You got Atom Cats. You need Omega Dogs. It's that kind of thing. And that's that. So I love the idea of the devil that summons demons. This is the Dandy Knight, the Dandelion Knight, the Dandy Knight, and that, it looks like a what is that? It's a nut for a shield. And this is one of the pixie fey creatures that the fey summoner can summon. This is the Fall of Blackbottom art, which is another first level adventure that it's a first level adventure for Draw Steel. It's a first level adventure for Draw Steel that recapitulates the first act of the Chain of Acheron, but you get to make your own characters and do your own stuff. And it's not a starter adventure. It is not a starter adventure. It is an adventure. It is so the Delian Tomb is the car that you drove when you were getting your driver's license test. This is a Ferrari, right? It's a completely different adventure. And these are all characters. These are all subclass characters. We love reusing the subclass characters. This is one of the things that the demon summoner can summon. Look at this thing. Unbelievable. Right. These are Olympia Sheathale. I don't know how to pronounce that. It's like, what a name. That is a name. I feel like if I could pronounce that name, I'd be a better person. If someone were excited to run and play games in Vasloria, what's your couple sentence elevator pitch of things a director should know? RE, Vasloria, and Orden. Most people have very limited access to magic. My pitch for Vasloria is it basically is medieval Europe, like 12th century Europe, although what that means differs from depending on your point of view. If the world worked the way people in actual real world 12th century Europe thought it did, like there is magic around, right? They just don't have ready and easy access to it. It is a world in need of heroes, is what I would say. It is a world in need of leadership, a world where Ajax the Invincible came through and cut off the head of the feudal system. And now there's no infrastructure. The roads are dangerous. The forests are dangerous. Nobody trusts anybody anymore. Peoples like elves, dwarves, and humans that used to trade all the time don't anymore. And it takes leadership. It takes people. It takes ordinary people with extraordinary abilities who see, read Dazar, and I could read it right now. You want the pitch? I'll give it to you. Here, let's finish this. So the one thing ain't none of y'all seen is Grace's mock-up for our first big adventure, we want to make sure we you know, like I made a whole video about this, like Curse of Strahd should be a sometimes food, not an all the time food. But it makes sense for them to make it all the time, to make hardcover adventures like that, because that's their economic model. But we've got a different philosophy. Are you a philosopher? And so we are making lots of little adventures: Dark Heart of the Wood, Fall of Black Bottom, The Condemned, The Red Road. Lots of little adventures. Some are a third of a level, some are a whole level. But this is going to be our first adventure where it's multiple levels, and I think it's 5. I think it takes you from 3rd to 8th level, and it's our version, sort of. It's us, our riff on. It's not an adaptation of. It's very, very, very loosely inspired by Red Hand of Doom. But also, if you watch Dusk, which I think you can watch on this channel, if you watch Dusk, that is Act 1 of this adventure. And this adventure is called Crack the Sun. And this is the art for it. This is the mock-up of the cover, where it's a shot of the surface of the sun, but instead of sunspots, you go, oh my God, those are cities, and they're connected by roads, and you are on a ship. Maybe this ship looks like this on the cover, and maybe in the actual thing, maybe it's not a ship, maybe it's a ritual. That's how you get to but the surface of the sun is a world. People live here. This is the home world of the Heliox, right? And trapped inside the sun is an ancient evil that someone is trying to make a little less ancient, a little bit more au courant, one might say. So the pitch, I would say the pitch, and this is very self-indulgent, I apologize, but it's my stream. What are you going to do? If you don't like it, what are you doing here? If you don't like it, what are you doing here? Let's see. So I'm gonna indulge myself a little bit. Everything I'm about to read you, this is not the pitch for Orden. It's just the end. It's just the end bit. It's the end bit is my pitch, and I don't even know if it's any good as a pitch. Once again, the people who make things are rarely the people who are best at pitching it, if that makes sense. It should be obvious. It should be obvious, but I think it's not obvious to everybody. So this is the ancestral ride. This is the ride. This is the fiction, the little kind of like microfiction you get in the hero's book for dwarves, and there's a little bit of preamble that's just about dwarves, and then a little bit later you get all the stuff dwarves can do, and in the middle, and it's actually very similar. I noticed, and I really like this when I was looking at Daggerheart. I was like, oh, Daggerheart did the same thing we did. They have just as much text for here's what these things are about, and here's their abilities, but then in the middle we put fiction, they put concept art. Same thing. Just art. It's all art. It's all art. This is illustration, and this is prose, and they do the same thing. They're just trying to communicate a vibe, trying to give you the impression that you've met one of them. That was the thing that was important to me. The thing that was important to me for, like, we can, if the game is a hit, we'll do the complete book of dwarves in the future, and it'll be more than you ever wanted to know. But I wanted to get to the point where you wanted that stuff. And so the first thing that was important to me was that you get to meet one. I felt like that was the most important thing we could do in this space, rather than doing let's just do the David Attenborough nature documentary encyclopedia entry about them. I've seen that a million times. I don't feel we need to do it again. And it turned out that I didn't know this was true, but over time, what happened with these write-ups was they were turning into a story. They ended up each being little chapters in a larger story. Not all of them were. Like the 2 elf entries, they're a completely different timeline. The Revenant entry is completely different. But all the other ones, it was turning into a getting the team together story. I didn't know that at first. And then once I realized it, I kind of had to go back. I originally had a completely different write-up for the Hakan, and I'm like, I think it needs to be Ardashir. Ardashir is too cool to put an illustration of him up, and then you don't get to meet him in the lore. Come on. That's one of my favorite pieces in the entire book is the Ardashir piece. It's brilliant. Okay, but this is the dwarf piece. In fact, let me ixnay on the Uzukme, because I like the music, but it's weird underneath me writing. Okay. So again, the reason I'm reading this is because I think the end of this is the pitch for Vasloria. They can be stubborn, Embers said. John smiled and gave her a look as they walked around the barn. Yeah, not like elves and humans, right? Embers grinned. They're good in a fight, John said, and his tone implied this was all that mattered. They're natural commanders. Yes, I can imagine why, Embers said. Every sentence sounds like an order. They found the dwarf at the edge of the old quarry outside of town, cutting blocks of stone with a long copper saw. It normally took 2 people a quarter hour, but the dwarf sawed an entire block in 2 with a single stroke. The stones smoked as they fell, and the copper saw glowed with heat. John and Embers watched silently as the dwarf hefted another massive stone onto the cutting block. The dwarf spit into his hands and noticed the two out of the corner of his eye. He paused, walked over to grab his battle staff with the hourglass symbol of Zarok, lawgiver, at the tip. He walked back to the stone and leaned his staff against a tree stump within easy reach should he need to use it. And if this sounds like a scene from a movie, it is. Shut up. He went back to work. "Good morning," John said. The dwarf ignored them. "I'm a friend of Morag the Wise Woman," John said. "She said there was a high theocron of Zarok lawgiver around here working to earn his keep." The dwarf paused. "High theocron," he said. "A lofty title. Far too lofty for a job such as this." He went back to work, and a moment later, there were 2 more smoking blocks. He cleared them away. "There's a job for 9... John hesitated. Rat catchers didn't seem appropriate. He went with his gut. "Heroes. In Bedegar. A village looking for someone to stand against Lord Saxton." "I have heard of this one," the dwarf said, seemingly uninterested. He hurled the smaller blocks into a pile and went to hew a new stone to cut. "A foul tyrant. Well suited to these times. Perhaps the people deserve him." "No people deserve tyranny," Embers said, an edge in her voice. The dwarf appeared to notice her for the first time, peered at her, took in her raiment, and went back to work. 9 against Saxton." He carried the massive block over his head to the cutting stone. He shook his head in disbelief at what was being asked. "How great the opposition!" John told him. The dwarf dropped the stone in astonishment and stared at the human and elf. Then he smiled. "Ha! You know our traditions well, Sir Knight. You seek to grant me a glorious death, leading desperate soldiers against impossible odds." "Not that desperate," John said modestly. "Yes," he looked at Embers again. "By garb and reputation, I make you a... By garb and reputation, I make you a mist curls around dying embers. Mistress of the Tower of Translation. You are no stranger to power. But your tower is fallen, lady," he said. "Seek you revenge or justice?" "I see no reason to choose," Embers said smoothly. "But in my case, as well as the case of these villagers, justice would be revenge." The dwarf's head snapped back to look at Sir John. "She speaks my language as well, it seems. You are of a kind, you two." "We 3, John dared. The dwarf failed to stifle a smile. "And what is your stake in this?" John shrugged. "I mean, this is where we're really getting into it. This is what's Vaslori about? What is it about?" "And what is your stake in this?" John shrugged. "I've already been paid," he said. He fished around in a pouch on his belt. "Here, I'll split it with you. Fair and square." John flicked the coin off his finger with his thumb. It spun and glinted as it arced across the space between them. The dwarf snatched it from the air, opened his palm, and stared at it. Something in his face changed, softened. He looked at the nearby town that had adopted him. Peasants doing labor in the fields. He clenched his fist around the coin. "A princely sum," he said, mostly to himself. "You are Dazar," Embers dared. "High Theocron in exile. Yours is the greatest dwarven church in all Omen's land. Thousands look to you for spiritual guidance." The dwarf said nothing. He looked at the coin in his hand. "You left your people," Embers said quietly. "My people left me!" Dazar barked, clenching his fist. "When they embraced Ajax!" Embers just watched the dwarf. His rage subsided as quickly as it came. I thought my leaving might inspire my people to..." He looked at the nearby village. It matters not. I could not have stayed in any event. I lack the stomach for tyranny. Cal Calavar's new Thane is not an easy problem to solve," John said. "Saxton is." The dwarf looked up at Embers. "Her I know by reputation." He turned to look at John. John bowed slightly. "John," he said. Dazar looked at his armor, the age and weather of it, and made an intuitive leap. You served under the good king. John pursed his lips. That was a long time ago. Dazar shook his head once. Not to me. He picked up his battle staff and stepped forward. I knew him, you see. Omen was a fine king. The best will the best we'll see, even in a life as long as mine. No one spoke for a moment. This is the reason I started reading this. These people, Dazar said, these villagers, do they know what they ask? John didn't answer. Do they know that asking us for help, asking you, he looked Sir John up and down, means starting something they must see through to the end? It means hardship, privation, death, buying a future for their children. You told them this? John shook his head. Well, why not? Dazar demanded. You of all people must understand. Dazar, John said, and his measured voice was a quick counter to the dwarf's protest. These people are already at their wits' end. Just surviving, putting food on the table, keeping their children warm, giving them hope. It's already more than should be asked of anyone. And then coming to us, swallowing their pride, asking us for aid. It's our job to understand the job for them. Then, quieter, John added, and forgive them ahead of time when they weaken and give in to fear. Dazar stared at the man, this knight of Tor, and looked at embers quietly radiating pride in her friend. Dazar grunted. He opened a pouch on his chest and inserted the coin. Well, we must find a troubadour to tell the tale of Saxton's fall. I cannot wait to hear how it ends. He walked between them, carrying his staff over his shoulder. Come, he barked. There's a world needs mending. Why stand we here idle? John was grinning madly at Embers. She held up 3 fingers. What is Vasloria about? It's about the people and the tyrants and those who stand between them. Put the music back on now. Now I am 14 minutes behind on chat. Just Antihero says, I'm about to run the Cult of the Reptile God using Draw Steel. Any advice? I think you could just do it, bro. I think you can just do it. I think use a montage test to get through the swamp. But if you can't just do it, like, you're going to have to do some work, obviously, but it's the same work you would do adapting it to a different edition or a different D20 RPG. But otherwise, it should just work. D.A. Morrison says, if Vasloria has limited access to magic, how does that tone survive high magic heroes and villains? Because the heroes aren't peasants. That's the questions like that make me feel like I didn't explain it well. The average person is not a hero in Draw Steel. The average person does not have a level. You know, there might only be like 8 10th level heroes in all of Vasloria. You know, I mean, just being a first level hero, I think, means that you stand out and you're not like other people. I would say that's accurate, Talon Wolf. The Curse of Strahd isn't an adventure, it's a campaign, except the problem is, I don't most of these hardcover adventures, I don't think they break neatly into different adventures where you feel like the sense of accomplishment, where you go like, okay, we did that, we beat those guys. That's a chapter, and we feel like we're making progress. In fact, what usually happens is the opposite. It's one big adventure, and about, I don't know, like between 30 and 50% of the way in, everybody is sitting there going, why are we doing this again? I don't mean playing this game. I mean, like, why are we, this thing we're having to do because page 88 said we did. I forget what the hell we're doing. That's the thing we're trying to avoid. Heliox playable ancestry in the future, I would assume. Will the Summoner be released like the Illrigger and the Beastheart? Or it's just its own book? I think digitally, yes. But I think we might take the Summoner, the Beastheart, and the 6 ancestries we're working on right now and bundle them together into a print product. But that might require us fleshing some things out. We'll see. Hey, happy birthday, Bursch Bongos. Excuse me. The sun as a habitable or an inhabited place is so damn cool. Yeah, why not? I mean, that's what the Greeks thought. A lot of these people thought these things were just different worlds, like the moon is. They didn't think a lot of primitive people didn't think there was any real meaningful difference between the sun and the moon. They were just two different types of the same thing. One you saw at night, one you saw during the day. Yeah, Green in Dragon says, I do miss the old Hakan lore. Yeah, me too. But it was these were characters from a different plot line, right? The Society. And you don't get to meet any of them anywhere in the Heroes book other than in that chapter. And it would have been weird and confusing, I think. And it also, I wrote that original Hakan fiction when all Hakan heroes got Doomside. And once we're like, no, I think now that we have the Build-A-Bear system, we can make it so that you can be a Hakan without Doomside. I was like, well, now I think it's time. Now I need to write something else. And I love the idea that Ardashir doesn't have the Doomside. He's following his brother, who does. What's up, Brighton? That's fucking cool. I love the fact that people all over the world watch this stuff. Do I have an actor in mind for the dwarf? No, not for any of the characters, because I didn't invent them. The artist invent them. I tend to have, when I invent characters for my novels, is where I tend to think about who might play them, and that. But even that, it's not that these are thoughts I often have long after I've written the character. Are there plans for lots of splat books, online father figure? That all depends on whether or not people like this game and want more stuff. Do people engage with this game the way they engage with other flagship RPGs? Then I expect you will see all the stuff that those games have. And I think we're going to do a better job of supporting our audience and our community with stuff that I think they would like. Somebody asked a question. Man, somebody asked a question. It was really good, and I can't find it. Oh well. It keeps doing that. Stop it. There we go. It keeps wanting to jump. YouTube doesn't like it when I'm behind on chat. It tries to solve that problem for me, but I like it. Is this a nod to the Seven Samurai? No, I do not like that movie. Actually, that's not true. The Seven Samurai is gorgeous. I just don't think it's. I think it could have been cut down a lot. It doesn't have a bad guy. I think the American remake is better in almost every way. Olympia says, that's it. I don't know his class, but that speech has the soul of a paladin. It's funny because when I wrote that and then I sent it to the team, Jason said, hey, you wrote him the way I drew him. Good job. And I love that. I love the fact that Jason had a character and an attitude in mind for this character. And that's why I wrote him. Made me feel like I did something right. How was Good King Omen defeated? He was betrayed by the captain of his guard, Mandrake, who was in league with Ajax and Mortem. So what's Draw Steel about? What do you mean what it's about? It's on every page. It's about the heroes. It's about the people and the tyrants and the people who stand between them. It's everywhere in the book. And so it's always interesting to me when people are like, when they want to pretend like the game isn't about something when it's self-evidently about a lot of stuff. Actually, they just didn't want to read it, or maybe they want dad to tell them. Right? It's like, well, I'm not your dad. I'm not here to raise children, but it's all through the books. Yeah, Against All Tyrants was one of the shortlisted names. Against All Tyrants was one of the shortlisted names. Until the Last Villain Dies was another one. I fucking love that one. Vanquish was another one. There was one that we really liked. There was another name that made it to the short list that we thought would be like a whole, the name of the game would also be a series of names for other products. And now I can't remember it. It was Tyrants Vanquished. That was it. We thought Tyrants Vanquished might be a great name. And then we thought Tyrants Vanquished might be the name of the hero's book. And then the monsters might be Dragons Slain and stuff like that. You know, and the kind of, and we were inspired once we had that idea, we were inspired by Have Gun Will Travel, which is a very obscure reference in this day and age. Do my books I mean, I think you'll get audiobooks. I think you'll get me reading audiobooks of my novels at some point, assuming I am not struck by tragedy, which happens to all people eventually and people every day randomly. Tyler F says, haven't played any TTRPGs in a while and picked up Draw Steel last night after watching the new video. Very excited for it to get here. I am also very excited for you to get it. Hector Vivis says, or yeah, probably Vivis. Man, I got into I had no idea this band even existed, but I listened to 666, which is a giant double album by basically Vangelis, but Vangelis in the early 70s when he was in a band, but it's mostly him doing everything, and then a songwriter doing, and it's unbelievable. I'd never heard of this before, and I didn't even know this existed. Right, I sort of thought Vangelis sort of sprang, from Zeus's head, so to speak, and discovering that he had a band in the '60s, and this was their kind of apotheosis, and kind of the end of that band, where he was like, "I don't want to make pop stuff anymore." I'm like, I don't know, man. Some of these songs are, if the thing you don't like about pop songs is hooks, now I understand why I like this better than I like most of the music you made. I mean, I love Vangelis. It's just that dude writes, he writes a lot. His stuff is, pretty anodyne compared to the stuff in 6. It's brilliant. Whatever you think, it's so fun. You can see clips of me listening to it on Blue Sky. Yeah, it's awesome. And it was because I was listening to Steven Wilson's. Steven Wilson has a new show on Sirius XM where it's a prog show, and his point is, I want to break people of this perception that prog is these 5 bands. He's like, no, man, it's all over the place. It was all over the place in the 60s and 70s. It's still all over the place. And so I'm listening to this. I'm like, I only hear like 3 songs, and I didn't know who any of them were except when he back announced one of them. And I was like, that was all of that. It was amazing. So I got to listen to the rest of it. Using Draw Steel to initiate coworkers to TTRPGs. I love the idea that Draw Steel could be somebody's first RPG. You know what? I think they would have a blast. Is again, learning curve, but use the Delian Tomb. No learning curve on the Delian Tomb, just on-ramping. It's not a curve, it's a ramp. Surge on is human. There was somebody online early on in a comment on a YouTube video, this is a while ago, saying, I was 100% sold on this game until I saw that one of the main characters' names was John. And then I was like, nope, I can't with this. So that's what you got when you're thinking about when you think about people's takes on this game. That's where these things, that's the kind of stuff you get. Basically everything you can think of, somebody is saying somewhere online about this game, and that just means it exists. It's epiphenomenal. It's one of those things that I very quickly became inured to a long time ago, well before Strongholds and Followers. Just making YouTube videos, I realized that everything you could imagine anyone would ever say about me, people were saying online. And so you just go, okay, well, anyway, moving on. Physical version of the Delian Tomb, no plans for that right now. We would need to see somebody like Target or Walmart or maybe Barnes & Noble or one of those kinds of companies who were expressing interest in this. And in the past, when people have come to us with those kinds of deals, they tend to be really predatory and not and I recognize them. I'm like, no, that person's going to offer this. And that's the same as they want us to be in the bargain bin or something. And it turns out that's exactly it. And we're not interested in that. But we don't need that right now. That would be great. But the game is doing extraordinarily well all on its own. All on its own. Good luck, George Sainsbury. Run in Australia. Well, listen, if you stop playing TTRPGs and you went to play Gloomhaven, I think draw steel is going to feel really natural to you. But you're never going to fuck up the top-bottom thing. Doesn't matter how much you play draw steel, you'll never fuck that up. Can you port a 5e character into draw steel? It depends on who that character is and what your attachment to them is. The vibe, sure, you could capture the vibe, absolutely, but it depends. Maybe not. Depends on what inspired you. What were the inspirations that caused you to come up with this character? Those might not be in here, right? So you can do it, but I think the best way of going about it is just read the hero's book, and what are you inspired to make? You're going to have more fun playing that. Once again, was the captain of the guard a dragon knight? Yep. Here we go. Why does YouTube is like, you're way behind. I'm just going to scroll to the end. I'm like, don't do that. That's a good question, Demon Jadar. I have no idea who that dude is. Maybe. How do I nurture freedom of choice in adventure design? I believe in sort of like classic, what they call sandbox design, which is we tell you what to do, we don't tell you how to do it. So that gives you a lot of agency, but it's not, if what you're looking for is perfect agency, where the director has nothing prepared and has bought no adventures, and the players just say, I want to do this. And the director goes, okay, I'll go build that. That's the West Marches. And that's a whole style of game, and it doesn't have anything to do with any adventure we've ever made. So for our design, it's a lot about, okay, it's our job to chase you up a tree. And I think if you play like the Fall of Blackbottom, we do a really good job of that. It's our job to chase you up a tree. It's your job to figure out how to get down. And that's where problem solving and creativity and all that stuff comes in. And if you're the kind of player who doesn't like that, then you're probably not going to like our adventures. But it seems like people really like it. So, and in fact, I think we're going to do even more stuff like the Condemned. The Condemned is crazy, and I think it's going to be a colossal hit. And if I'm right, I think it may be how we do a lot of adventures moving forward. I don't think so. No, the Dark Crystal, Woad Elves, Dark Crystal. Nope. I just always, I have my own idea about elves, and it is largely me trying to reverse engineer, like, what if all the stuff Tolkien was talking about were real, and not just different drafts of different products that weren't originally meant to be related. And so that's where Celestials come from, and elves and high elves and Woad Elves. And I always imagined Woad Elves. I don't know if I always imagined this, but once Jason and I started I have the hiccups, I apologize. Once our art director and I started talking about what Woad Elves could look like, that's where we hit upon the idea of like big eyes, wider set, kind of alien looking, unsettling, not human proportions for the size and spacing of eyeballs, and big ears. I think they got progressively bigger out of scope or scale of what I imagined, but it's still cool. And Jason did a mock-up he did some character design. It looked amazing. Like that kind of stuff. I thought we could put that in the book. He's like, we can't put this in the book. Are you kidding? I'm like, oh, okay, fine. These are great illustrations, but they were really tall and spindly, and the eyes and the ears made them look alien. And I'm like, I love it. I love everything about it. Right? These are alien species. They are alien species that all share a planet. They should not just be different flavors of person. Homo sapien. That's dumb. And Tolkien thought the same thing. Tolkien was like, if I was a better writer, I would have differentiated these a lot more. And then he thought, as he's writing, but then I would have been a science fiction writer, and that's not what I wanted to do. I'm like, fair enough. I have a different attitude toward fantasy than that dude does. Grosnor, that was very almost improvised. We wanted to make the game that played the way you imagine D&D must play when you first heard about it. I really believe that. I mean, I agree, Agile Mech. I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to say woe is me. No, quite the opposite. I agree with you. Draw Steel is massively loved and adored already. I mean, it's a bit of a miracle, but I agree. I was just trying to let people know, when you go into the world and you see people talking about Draw Steel, you're going to see every opinion you can imagine. That is not a problem to solve. Stick with the folks who are vibing the way you like and ignore all the others. Because that's, by the way, that's what those people are doing. those people, they're just talking to their own audience, and that's fine. The old orc lore with the gods talking was amazing. Yeah, I liked that too. But again, I felt like that you don't meet an orc in that write-up. That write-up was fun. And I wrote it when I realized I could write anything. It doesn't have to be the David Attenborough narration. It doesn't have to be the Encyclopedia Britannica write-up. I'm sick of that stuff, right? That can be later. But I want to hook you. I want you to meet one. I want you to get a feeling of what they are like when you meet them, you know? And then one of my yardsticks is like, if you read a Star Trek original series screenplay and you shaved all the names off, you'd still be able to tell when Spock was talking. Because that dude is an alien and he has a completely alien point of view, right? And that to me is the gold standard. And so the fact that you don't meet an orc in that original orc write-up, you just get to hear the gods talking about their creation. That was fun, but at the end of the day, I'm like, nope, we got to meet an orc. And you meet Corbin. She's awesome. She's fucking cool as shit. Do I think you'll get a Mandrake stat block someday? Yeah, I do actually. Presuming everything, you know. Any cool malice moments for my home game? Probably, but I don't know. I mean, a lot of my monsters are homebrewed. So the malice I'm using is often kludged. I think, what are we at? 90 minutes is about the right amount of time, by the way. Yeah, John Herzog, I recycled some of the names we didn't use for the game into the Dragon Oath. What was the name of the mage who created the Dragon Knights? Vitae, who was Omen's court mage. Doug, that's why I did it. I wanted more people. I wanted to make it easier for more people to get behind the screen. I'm very happy. You would have got there without me. You would have got there without me, Doug. You just don't know that. All I did was shorten the way, and I'm happy to do that. But you did all the work. Have gun will travel is the something of the name. I don't know the lyrics, gonna sing it just the same. What's up, South Africa? Timber W073. Hope you're doing well. Yeah, and Stand By Me. I mean, Have Gun Will Travel was a huge influence on the boomers, but also a huge influence on that generation. It was right before, like Gary Gygax's generation, right before the boomers. It's a little 1950s, I think. It might be early 60s. But it was hugely popular, and it was advertised, and it was perceived at the time as being the thinking man's Western, was the phrase they used. Because the main character, Paladin, is incredibly well educated. He's read the classics, speaks multiple languages, lives in San Francisco, and is sort of like basically a superhero. He has that kind of comic book logic. He's a gambler and Sherlock Holmes and a rootin' tootin' Western cowboy character dude. Kind of impossible, but really, really good show. Austin Quinn says, you missed Gen Con. You could have had a booth and cleaned up. No, we could not have. That is not an option for us. I mean, we could have had a booth. I think maybe we could have gotten a booth about as big as this desk I'm sitting at. But Gen Con is not... Gen Con's pretty hostile to companies like ours. And they're happy to stay that way, and we're happy to leave them that way. I think if we ever have a real convention presence, it's going to be at a much smaller convention. Or, it can maybe like one of the PAX conventions or Gamehole Con or something like that, where that's our home base. And I think Gamehole Con makes more sense. I've not been, but lots of friends of mine have. Gen Con is where it is because that's the largest hall that they could find that was non-union, right? And that limits how big it can be. And it feels that way when you're there. I used to go to Gen Con in the 90s when it was very different. I was an exhibitor. I was there as a full-time employee of a game company. And just walking the exhibitor hall was an unbelievable experience. Everywhere you went, there were people demoing games. All you had to do was walk up and they would run their game for you. And it was amazing. You could talk to the developers, and it wasn't this like constant press of bodies the way it is now. It's super gross now. It's super gross and unfun. And then the fact that like you can't just have a lot of money and want a booth and buy one. Nope, because there are too many people who want booths and not enough space. So what they do is they have this kind of like grandfathering clause where the people who've been going to Gen Con the longest have the opportunity to buy as big a booth as they want. And so you get these really old companies that have these huge presence, and then it gets progressively smaller and smaller until, if we had gone, it would have been an incredibly small booth, and that would be true for years. And it's like, what's the upside? What's the upside? Nobody that it's not the 90s anymore, man. People don't do that thing where if you don't go to like new games debut at Gen Con and everyone's waiting because there's no social media and there's no like periodicals or anything covering the industry. If you don't release at Gen Con, no one knows your game exists. Well, it's the opposite now. It's Gen Con is this old kind of relic of a bygone era. And I loved going there, and I miss going there, and I like going to conventions, but I don't think Gen Con is ever really going to be a thing for us, nor should people want it to be, is my point. It would mean us spending a stupid amount of money and just pissing off a lot of people because they wouldn't be able to they physically would not be able to get to the booth. Just me walking around the floor at Gen Con, this is crazy, causes people to, and it's like, fuck. And like my general manager's like, if you're going to go to Gen Con again, you're going to need your own security. And he comes from a world where that's common. And it's like, I don't want to go to Gen Con then. I don't want to go. Having to, it didn't used to be that just getting to the counter of the booth required you to kind of like put on a pith helmet and, no, it was just, you could just walk up there. Take it easy, Scotland. Excuse me. I mean, that is, oh my gosh, it's a leg. That is things I've seen people say. Well, look, Dennis Membrino says, okay, weird hill to die on. Well, that's kind of my point, is that there are people out there for whom fantasy means a bunch of random, fantasy names are just random letters in a row with a bunch of apostrophes. And so when they see something that's human and relatable, they freak out because that's not what they go to fantasy for. It's like, let's just shake hands and go our separate ways. Hello, says Richard Guilin. Is the draw steel $10 tutorial actually no prep? I think it is. It depends on what you mean by no prep. It's not Neo in the Matrix where we jack into your brain and you suddenly go, now I know all the rules of draw steel. No, it is a tutorial and it walks you through the process of learning the game. And I'm not the person you should ask. You should go into the community and you should ask them because they're running it and they're doing it. So yeah, Varen of Tatooine says it is no prep. Yes. How do I feel about the idea of adapting draw steel to non-fantasy? I mean, I don't, my attitude about fantasy has changed a lot. When I look at a John Berkey piece, I think that's fantasy. That doesn't have anything to do with science or fiction. It's not science at all. There's the things that John Berkey and Chris Foss drew, no one could ever build. Even if you had all the technology, you would need magic. You need magic wands to make that shit work. And so when I see that stuff, I think, yeah, that's fantasy. My definition of fantasy now includes stuff like the X-Men, Lord of the Rings, all this stuff doesn't have anything to do with science fiction. It's all this other stuff. Star Trek is all fantasy. They walk around with magic wands. They can do anything. There's no science. There's no science anywhere in there except that every once in a while they bust out a thesaurus and start. But they ran out, and that's where technobabble comes from, is they just invent all this nonsense. Doesn't have anything to do with science. Never did. How do I feel about the fantasy kitchen sink issue? I don't feel anything about it because I don't know what it is. It sounds like the kind of thing where I'm happy not knowing about it. Do I think Andor is still fantasy? No, I would not describe it. I would not describe it thus. But that's one of the brilliant things about Star Wars is Star Wars is a pastiche, and it always has been. And it's one of the reasons people online have such a hard time grappling with the difference between their understanding of draw steel and the stuff people make for it. I mean, of Star Wars, lol. Is that Star Wars started off as a mashup. It's got Flash Gordon in there, but it's also got the Hidden Fortress in there. It's got the Dam Busters in there. It's got British Flyboys. It's got a Western Gunslinger in there. It's a mashup. It's always been a mashup. And so Andor is just acknowledging that and saying, okay, if Star Wars is a mashup, then that means that it can be this. And it's not a lot of the other things Star Wars is. Like, never in Andor are you in Wild West land and dealing with characters like Han Solo. It's not that kind of game. It's not that kind of game. It's not that kind of show. Science themed. I would not go that far. I don't think it has anything to do with the theme of science. In fact, I would say the opposite. I think it's selling. I think it's like transporters and and replicators and all this stuff. It's like, that's fantasy, man. That's Gandalf shit. I think that's it, folks. I think we've probably wrung all the changes out of this live stream that I think it is reasonable to do so. Well, the show is called Have Gun Will Travel. Paladin was the name. I think it's actually the nickname of the character, isn't it? Isn't it named like Herc or something like that? Anyway, I don't know when we will see each other next. I stream on Twitch all the time, randomly, because I don't want to be a professional streamer. Will you ever see a supplement that's Timescape related? I don't know. All of these questions about will we see this supplement, will we see that supplement, the answer to them is all the same. I don't know. You tell me how many people are going to buy this game. I don't know the answer. You folks are way more empowered to answer that than I am, because you're the community. You're the ones spending the money. So if a lot of people buy it, then everything is on the table. Yes to everything. If it tapers off and people are like, anyway, that was cool, moving on, then no, we're going to move on to do other stuff. So until the next time, I hope you all have a good rest of your weekend, if it is indeed the weekend where you are and not Monday, if you're in the antipodes. And we got lots of videos coming, lots more Draw Steel videos, more videos unrelated to Draw Steel. And I don't know how I'm going to do it. I might just make a whole bunch of Draw Steel videos and then make the videos that aren't, but I might take these and go, I don't know. There's not a right answer, probably. It's based on how I feel. But we're going to do a video probably just on the classes, and do a video just on another different video just on ancestries. I might do a video explaining a couple of the rules that people tend to get hung up on, or the more kind of complicated, like I wouldn't do a whole video just on minions, but maybe a short. I think we're going to do lots of shorts, and we already are identifying partners we can work with to make shorts, so it's not always just me, and that's going to be super fun. So yeah, there's going to be lots more Draw Steel videos. We're just getting started, folks. We're just getting started. We made this game for you. We made it for you. Now, you might not like it. That's fine. But somebody else, if not Draw Steel, someone else is making a game that is probably really well tailored to your personal idiosyncratic needs. And Quinn's would be a good place to start to go find it. Anyway, until next time, folks, thanks for watching. Be seeing you.